O dabar į sceną norėtume pakviesti mūsų svečią iš Danijos. Henning Larsen Architects, vyresnįjį architektą, dizaino vadovą ir vyriausiąjį planuotoją Mateusz Mastalski su pranešimu Openness instead of opening hours.
So, firstly, I would like to apologize that Viggo, who's supposed to be here today, couldn't arrive. It's because of some unexpected circumstances. But he says apologize, and the office has sent me, and hopefully I'm a good replacement, and you're going to enjoy my lecture. I'm Mateusz Mastalski. I'm living in Denmark almost 10 years. I'm Polish. I'm having position of a lead design architect, and I'm one of the persons responsible for conceptual design in the office. This is my first time in Lithuania, in Vilnius, and you know, like part of my childhood, I was like playing quite intensively basketball, and like, you know, when I arrived to Vilnius, I'm gonna see kids, you know, playing in all the corners, try to be Sabonis. And you know, I went around the city yesterday, tried to get lost, and I was kind of disappointed I haven't seen those kids, but maybe it was because it was evening. But however, I found out something else. I mean, I found the city to be like super fantastic. I mean, I don't know if it was this very nice warm night, but the people were like, no, outside the city, and I went to this area, Užupis, and I know it was great. I mean, it was almost like Copenhagen. I was thinking like, okay, I mean, that's a nice place to live, and the people were smiling. I don't know if it was because I was doing the pictures of all of those people, but anyway, people seems to be very, very nice. And that's kind of my lecture going to be about. It's going to be not that much about the architecture, but about like how the architecture could affect the people and the human being. And I would like to also share you like what we believe in the architecture and how do we understand it, and also about this responsibility we have as an architects for society and the cities, like in this situation I had yesterday. And also I would like to tell you like how the projects can give more to the cities. And so we're just not talking about like in the title of this lecture like opening hours like from 8 to 5, but like being really open to the city and really thinking about what else can we give to the place, to the city. So as I said, I'm not going to talk that much about like facade structures, but more about ideas that were behind the projects. For our office, architecture is about building space that help to create the human interactions, like places where we meet, talk, or feel like home. The videos are not working, but this is a picture show. Ah, actually it's working. Okay. We're an international office, being on the market for almost 60 years, having offices from Hong Kong through Riyadh, Oslo, Munich, Faroe Island to New York, which was established by Henning Larsen, and we have this like multi-international experience across all the offices. We're more than like 300 people. And 200 working in a mother office in Copenhagen. More than 32 nationalities. We're doing projects in more than 25 countries. But what is important is this factor of like being multinational, like working on the projects that you're kind of like tend to do every day. That you're really kind of forcing yourself to work in a different environment, different context, and like forcing yourself to understand this context from climatic, cultural, economical, and political perspective. So we have like many people, and we also have Lithuanian architects, and I must say they're like super dedicated, hardworking, and extremely talented people, and I'm really glad to work with them. But the thing is that like quite often we're not having like Polish or Lithuanian architects working on the projects we do in Lithuania or Poland. No, we try to switch them because that's more challenging also for us as an architects. But we use them to understand the culture. But our roots, inspiration, our backyard, our playground is Copenhagen. And Copenhagen in Denmark itself seems to be like the happiest nation in the world, the best city in the world, at least it was, now it's number 6. But it's more like in this picture, and it's also like this picture I had yesterday. It's about like the public space, it's about like the place where we meet, interact, socialize, you know, having a beer. We can have a beer can drink beer publicly in Copenhagen, and you know, just like simply enjoying life and like, you know, being a part of it. And this is also part of us as an architects in Scandinavian office trying to work across the world. And we also love bikes. I mean, 35% of people in Copenhagen using the bike as a main transportation system. Another 40% using public transportation. So it means that there's like, I don't know, 10-15% that's going to the office, to the work by car. I have myself 3 bikes, and it's not only pragmatic, it's more like, you know, like this Nike advertisement, like, you know, way of freedom, being independent, you know, kind of boss on your own time, don't care about the schedule, not worrying about the parking space. But there's also another thing, it's like super cheap, so people can just spend those money on something absolutely else, not having like a super fancy car, paying for those parking spaces, but I don't know, spend times with the kids, go for holidays, for a nice weekend, and so on. But most of the time, we also have those kind of days, and actually quite a lot. I would say 80% of the time is cloud cover. And what does it mean for architecture and urban planning? Is that we need to understand those local contexts, but not only about what I said, architecture, urban fabric, economy, politics, but also understand the everyday culture of the people living there, but also climate. And this is a movie from pictures from Copenhagen, and just in a few minutes, you know, there was like a heavy rain, flooded main roads, and you know, like the climate change is like really affecting us, and it's visible. I don't know, you've seen the news, like what's happening in Asia, America, Japan. It's like, this is like everyday life. So we have to design having this climate impact in back of our heads, those extremes also as well. So we need to like think about creating resilient and smart projects that are reliable for their context, and really taking this climate like seriously, like basically it was in the past. So we try to do in our office, taking this climate issue, not an issue actually, like a challenge, like as a starting point, as in the design process, and it's really trying to create the projects that react and respond to the local climatic conditions. Like working on this type of like methodology is we call it like a knowledge-based design. So of course, like we care about like the architecture functionality, but also like how the building reacts to the climate. It's a part of that task. So this is the project for the try to rethink also like how the modern town hall looks like. It's in Toronto, in the suburbs of Toronto. Like if someone been, it's like more to the west, called Etobicoke. And then the way to do like to find this interpretation was to do a civic center. So it's not just like an office where you go, but it's just more than that. So when we have started to work on the project, the brief was saying like, okay, 50% of the space has to be the civic center, and then the other part has to be like, there was a clear line, has to be public space. And then we run like our first analysis, like trying to see like what is the climate condition in that space, and you know, quite often you see those like super great plazas, nice design, but no one is sitting there. And no one is sitting is because like, it's too windy and there's like no like protection for that. So what we try to do in this project, because it was so exposed to the wind, we try to like think how we can organize, how we can manipulate the volumes to reinforce those climate conditions, like to rework and manipulate, to protect from the wind, which is like the main cooling factor in Toronto. So the volume was kind of like protecting this heart of the project, which was like the public space, the civic square, and when you're designing and like thinking about climate condition, like it's not about like, you know, making the winters warmer or like making the summer colder. That's kind of difficult. I mean, you can use the trees. There are some like solutions, but like in most of the cases, what you are able to change is what it's called like shoulder season. So it's like the season that you like put your jacket on the shoulder, and then it's still kind of okay. So that's mainly like autumn or spring. So in this project, we were able to extend it by just like manipulating the volumes, like this like comfortable conditions for 4 to 6 weeks. But what does it mean? It's like, it's something that it's not like temperature you have outside the outside window on your thermometer. It's more that like perceived temperature. So it's like taking account of like wind, chill factor, humidity, temperature, and so on, like what you're wearing as well, and so on. So in Toronto, in the street, and in the spring or autumn, like this chill factor, this is like 4 degrees. So it's pretty cold. I mean, people like not tend to be on the streets in Toronto, like when it's kind of chill. But by manipulating this volume, we're able to like raise this temperature by 14 degrees. And if I could tell you like how much is that, it's like some researchers are saying, made like in major cities in Europe, said that just average 5 degrees more in the public space means that there's 20% more people in the public space. So now you can imagine like what sort of like tool we have like as an architect, just thinking about that. I mean, we can really kind of like look into the program layout, like how we can like more carefully like located programs in those around the plaza. Like how we can curate the public space when we're sure that like it's climate protected, how often people are going to stay outside, not inside, and also like how we can animate the ground floors from this absolutely different perspective. I mean, now we can say, okay, I mean, in this corner, I mean, there's sun in the morning, so probably it's wind protected. So basically, it's a great place for having a bakery, and then we know that this bakery is going to succeed because it's a nice spot. So then if you like curate also like, I don't know, if you're a client and you're like looking into the programming and layout of the project, it's like also like information that's kind of like making things easier for you, because you can also say to your tenant saying, okay, I mean, this is the perfect, it's like, you know, scientific proofed. But in this project, it was like that. So basically, the whole program that was civic related to people was based around the civic square. Like, so we tried to take as much as possible to that, and then the office spaces were those kind of protecting the square from the climate. So we ended up in this like creating this multifunctional space that can be used all year around. And this element that is like popping up, this kind of like diagonal cut, this is like the council chamber, and that's where the most important decisions are making. But that's also where the entrance to the building is like. So we also try to break those boundaries between like make the things more democratic and open. So the aim was like to create this like new public destination, and also like we try to work a lot with the green. But not like, you know, this green brainwash that we have, but actually in Toronto they have like super beautiful springs and autumns. So that was also sort of a manifesto of the seasons in Canada. So the building is also changing during the seasons by itself. The next project I would like to talk about is it's Mosgard Museum in Aarhus. Aarhus is the second biggest city in Denmark. And there's a story about a guy he's living in Aarhus, and he's visiting this place quite often. He's like, you know, jogging there like in the morning, like going there like mountain biking with his friends, and one day he went with the picnic with his family, and then his daughter, she was like wanted to have like a chocolate, hot chocolate, and then she wanted to go to the toilet. And then that was the moment that the guy, he realized that he's standing on top of the museum. And I think this is saying something about the project we try to do in the office, is try to find this like hidden layer, which is not kind of, you know, set in the brief, but is offering this additional value to the city. So it's not just about the museum, it's about this gesture the museum is giving to the city, to the citizens being around. The museum itself is very simple. It's just like a big slope, like connecting the landscape, which is kind of also unusual. I mean, Denmark is like pretty flat, so by itself, this gesture was like a big thing. So the building is a museum of prehistorical items, and the existing museum is this like a red building down there. And what happened is like they started to like few years ago, big excavations, archaeological excavations, and then they found this, and that was basically our client. That's the oldest Dane in the world, at least the person that was found on Danish land. So that was the main reason the museum got built. So the whole project was kind of thinking about this evolution, like how the evolution of the human being was through ages. And it was, in a way, it's kind of interesting because like it's based on the big stairs when people are walking through those statues of the human beings, how they were looking in the different ages, and people, you know, they can just stand next to it, they can compare to it, and I found this like super interesting when you feel that you see that people are like really interacting in the building. And then when they're walking through the building, then of course like they're stopping, having a break, and then they can just like look outside, and then suddenly they can just go outside the museum and like really enjoy this view. And usually in the museums, it's like this view is like only for like, you know, the visitors. But in this case, it's like we try to not make it just for a few, but like give it like really to the whole people in Aarhus. So everyone, they don't have to go to the museum. They can just go above and like have the same benefits. So as I said, this building is like kind of related really with the landscape, and what I also found quite interesting is like it's this like super democratic value, which I think it's especially for me it's something that really really is something we as an architects accept all the like making all the technical details. That's something that we really have to fight for, and also like this poetic approach. But just besides that, this place is also like the best sliding spot in Denmark at the moment. So, and the kids, they love that place, just to go there, you know, have a slide, go with the parents, and it's really like a place where people socialize, even though it's far away from the city center. Moreover, when the building started, the membership, the amount of memberships in the museum like raised 6 times. So now that they're thinking like to extend this place. The next project I would like to tell you, and I think it's the last one, is I think it's also the most important one of the most important projects we did in the office is the concert hall in Reykjavik, Harpa. And this project started as a symbol of wealth and fortune of Iceland and their people. But one night while we were designing, I mean, basically the client went bankrupt. Like basically the whole country got disappeared. But in the end, I think for the project it was good because it became a symbol of how to survive for them. After like a few months, actually a few years, the client they tried to organize after crisis, and the client came back, the city, and they said that they want to continue with this one with a much shorter program, but now it cannot be just a symbol of wealthy of the few. It's a symbol of the future of the people of the Reykjavik. So they really have to continue. And also like in most of the cases when you talk about concert halls, like you talk about the main hall, and moreover you talk about this stage, which is like usually in those type of buildings like 21 by 21 meters, and then the rest of the project, all this kind of like 30-40,000 square meters, is only supporting this stage. But what happened if the theater is not just 21 by 21 meter, but is more than that? What if the whole building is a stage, like all visitors, spectators, they become the part of that show. They take part in the scenography, or even do their own performances. I mean, in the old days when the people go to the cinema and the theater, you know, they try to like show off a little bit, like, you know, come with their new clothes, show their new wife or husband, like new car, and also like do the business, you know, try to network a little bit. But it was a place to socialize. So we really focus in this project like to provide a lot of those informal spaces where those things can happen, like frame those everyday social activities. And in this type of building, you have to understand that like if you're creating this building, if you're like making a program, this building is activated by 100 days of the year. That's when they have concerts, conferences, and so on. So it means that for more than 300 days, this building might stay empty. So what can you do? What can you do in this reason? Of course, you can like start to like animate the space with something, but in this place we try to like bring the public space to the building, like to create a place where you can work, you can meet. You don't have to go for the event to be there. Like to create this something that would be called like an urban living room. But also I mean, in the night, it's changing to this place where people are going to the show. It's more formal, more official. People dress up, but the building was intended, designed to be like seamless, to have minimized the amount of doors, so everybody can walk around. Of course, we have doors to get to the main hall, but the whole foyer was designed in a sequence of spaces where we can control ambience, sound, and allow for different activities. And also, what is fantastic in this building is that this idea of serendipity, of these unexpected activities happened that normally like doesn't matter with the concert hall. So people like organizing like yoga classes, kids are like playing around. Sometimes people are coming from the outside and start to do their own plays, and then they have like people just like working and visiting, just like being spectators in this one. But this building is also like, I mean, it's in a very extreme climate. So it's also about like how it is perceived from the outside. And this building kind of tried to represent this extreme of the climate and the extreme of the nature in Iceland. I mean, imagine, I mean, it's like when you have like the daylight for 24 hours, so you just have like 1 hour of light at night. So we have collaborated on this project with Olafur Eliasson, Danish Icelandic artists, and we started to travel with him to look for the wonders in the landscape of Iceland. He's very obsessed with Iceland and how Iceland is and how Icelandic landscape is built and perceived. So we start to look for like modern inspiration of the facade. The facade that like really can work with this extreme, can really express that extreme. And in this case, like he really thought that this could be like this basaltic, like three-dimensional element that kind of it's built. And then the whole building started to look like this ice block, like being super sharp, like especially in the morning when you have like very like sharp light. And you see on this picture how it's kind of like looking like almost like as rough as the rocks behind it. But then when the sun is coming, like start to reflect it context. But also like to find those extremes. I mean, this is the restaurant on the top floor, and this is a picture made in July in 10 o'clock evening, and then you can think like, I mean, how to design a cozy restaurant in this type of extremes. But also those elements that we have created, they really try to like downscale the building and really created, I think, something iconic to it, and then how the building is kind of like changing when the sun is like setting, like how the dynamics is showing those dynamics, the sharpness start to dissolve, and then the whole building start to be softer, and then start to kind of like almost disappear and melting with the sun, and then being more kind of opening up and really showing what is inside and how is it working, and then maybe this short video try to like explain with like how this building could work inside. There's a really nice music with that, but I mean, if we don't have it, we just can sort of. She's singing about Reykjavik. experience. They're really funny people down in Iceland. Usually when we're going, we're designing the buildings, we're going back and we're measuring the building afterwards. And we try to like measure everything, you know, like if the building is really like there's carbon zero emission and so on. And in this case, like very important was like to measure like how many people visiting the building. I don't know if you've been to Reykjavik. It has a super small airport. And in Iceland there's like 300,000 people, super small country. And you can imagine that this building has been visited in the first year of opening 1.2 million times. That means that like statistically like one Icelandic person was there like 3 times. And then we went to measure our own opera we designed in Copenhagen. And then it has been visited by Danes like 1 time every 3 years. And I think this is like super important evidence, like showing that the building is not just like, you know, wealthy few, it's like a building for people and for the city. And I would like to leave you with this thought and say really thank you for lecture and for invitation. So if you have some questions, I would be glad to ask you, to answer. Thank you.